Welcome. This video will review representational drawing from observation. Let's talk about materials. Here's the paper I will be using, Strathmore Drawing Paper 400 Series 18 by 24 inches. Aside from the paper, you will need a Masonite Drawing Board, clips to keep the paper steady, an HB, 2B, and 4B graphite pencils, some sharpening tools for the pencils, a sketchbook, and a kneaded eraser. Let's take a look at my drawing setup at home. My drawing board is leaning against the table and positioned on my lap so that I have an accurate view of my drawing, looking at it straight on. I can also clearly see my still life setup over my drawing board, so don't look at your drawing flat on your desk because the proportions will look off viewing it from that angled perspective. I have my still life setup in front of me. I tried a bunch of different objects and different arrangements of objects. When I assign this to my students, I instruct them to choose 5 objects to arrange together. Overlap the objects to make them relate to each other and to look natural together. Try a variety of different things. Don't settle on the first things you grab. Go for items that have more basic shapes, clean edges, simple shapes. Avoid items that have complicated text or labels on them, patterns or textures. Go for simple shaped items such as what you see here. I have some simple shapes and some complex shapes. There's a variety, so it's up to you what objects you choose, but you want something that's not too distracting or detailed, something that is reasonable for you to draw. Obviously, it depends on your level, whether you're more of a beginner or more advanced, but go for simple shaped items as what you see here. I have a sphere and some cylinders. Objects that resemble cones or cubes work as well. This setup is a little more complex because I added the houseplant here. I did that because I wanted to be interested in what I was drawing. However, depending on how much time you have on this drawing, you may want to keep the object simple. It's important to find an arrangement you are interested to draw. Fruits, vegetables, bowls, cups, paper towel rolls, etc. are all good options for simple shaped items. Look around the house and try various objects together. You also want to set up somewhere where you can comfortably draw at home. As you can see, I've set up things on my desk in front of a white wall. If you don't have somewhere like this, you can put drawing paper behind the objects, or if you have fabric that is plain with no pattern, that can help simplify things. You want to easily see the shadows. Set up your still life with one light source. Mine is provided by light from a nearby window. It creates simple shadows and gives a wide variety of values to work with. Look for an arrangement that provides a full range of values, and by values I mean the range from light to dark. If you don't have a setup near a window during the daytime to create that single light source, you could use anything else that you have to create the one light source, such as a lamp in a dark room. So there's the black and white version, so you can see how I have a range of value everywhere from light to dark and everything in between. So I have a variety of values to work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out using thumbnail drawings. If you don't know what thumbnail drawings are, they are small, simple sketches that artists use to figure out the composition before starting on the larger project. So after you get everything set up, that would be the next step, to start doing some thumbnail drawings in your sketchbook. I suggest using a 2B pencil in your sketchbook, and the thumbnail drawings, it depends. It's up to you what size you want to use. I typically have mine, like 3 to 5 inches in size. But that's up to you. So again, I'm starting out with the thumbnail drawings. Start with 5 and try both vertical and horizontal compositions. Try different arrangements or the same one at different angles. If you do 5 thumbnails and you don't find one that you like, keep doing them until you find a strong composition. As you can see, I put a star next to my favorite composition, the one that I was planning to use for my larger drawing. Keep them simple. It's just a plan for your composition, so you don't need to add value or detail or anything like that. This is a quick and easy way to plan your composition. So now that I've chosen a composition for my drawing, I can start on the larger project here. I'm starting out with a 2B pencil on my Strathmore paper. My still life is in front of me on my desk. Any brand of pencil is fine. You will need for this project at least an HB, a 2B, and a 4B, all sharpened to a long point. I will insert an image in the upper left-hand corner as I draw so that you can see what I'm drawing. But as I draw, pay attention as we watch the video on how I'm holding my pencil as I draw. You'll notice that most of the time I hold it in such a way where I can use the side of the pencil. It's not how you hold a pencil to write with, it's how you hold a pencil to draw with. I can use a really light touch holding my pencil this way. I can also get a lot of line quality variation. Keep in mind when you start the drawing, a lot of things are going to change. You'll have to trial and error through the drawing, adjust and edit. Things will get erased. You won't get it right on the first try. Make really light lines so that it will be easy to erase and adjust as you go. Also notice how I'm starting off the drawing using very basic shapes for placement. The teapot I initially put in as a cylinder shape, and I'm using center lines to help with keeping that cylinder shape upright and straight. I'm just placing in the objects as basic shapes to start, so don't do any details or particular shapes or shading at this point because you don't want to spend a bunch of time on things you may have to erase. Focus on composition and proportions first. Utilize the sighting technique for accurate proportions. If you don't know what the sighting technique is, make sure you have an understanding of what that is first, because that is a big part of getting accuracy in your drawing. I'm going to lay in all these basic shapes first using the 2B pencil, using the side of the pencil lead with a light touch. This stage is called the construction drawing stage. The construction drawing is when you draw as if everything is see-through. The tops and bottoms of these cylinders I'm drawing, the oval shapes, I'm drawing all the way through the entire shape. I'm not just drawing the curve in front, I'm drawing the entire oval shape all the way through the form. I'm doing this in order to get the curve of this shape accurate. Without doing this, it would be very difficult to get this to look convincing. So draw as if everything is see-through, keep things simple shapes, keep an eye on the proportions. This is a quick way to get everything down on the page so you can see your composition early on and make adjustments as needed. Make sure if you see an adjustment you want to make your adjustment before you erase the wrong line, because oftentimes I see students erase first and then redraw the wrong line, and this just makes the process frustrating and time consuming. Make sure you're not overzealous about erasing. Sometimes it's helpful to have the old line visible as a reference to where you want to create the new line. As you can see, I'm not concerned about details or values at this point. This is merely the construction stage, and I've spent at least a couple hours on this stage, so it's not something to rush through. You want to take your time and make sure you're 100% happy with the composition and proportions before you move on to anything else. I'm being very loose and general about the shapes of the objects, such as the leaves. So those leaves, they look very organic in real life, but I'm making them a little bit more angular as I'm drawing. Sometimes when you're just trying to look at overall proportions and shapes, it's a great idea to simplify. And one way to do that is making the shapes more angular and trying not to get hung up on details. So if you see little veins in the leaves or spots or other little details, just ignore that. Just draw the overall basic shape. So don't worry about trying to get things right on the first try. Drawing usually doesn't work that way. Try, going over your lines, adjusting lines, making new lines. You'll notice, for example, sometimes when I do those oval shapes on the cylinders that I will kind of move my pencil around multiple times of that oval shape until I get a really good shape, one that I want to keep. So sometimes that can be helpful with circles or ovals to kind of go around a few times. And I typically will create that motion hovering my hand above the page and moving from my shoulder, because that way I can get a really good even circle or oval shape. It's a lot more difficult to get accurate oval or circular shapes when you're resting your hand down on the paper. So again, at this stage, make sure that you're drawing as if everything is see-through. Try not to do too much erasing because you really want to just feel out those forms. It's not supposed to be perfect. You're just looking at overall height and width of the objects, placement of the objects, making sure your composition is looking good, that the placement of these objects is looking accurate. Really fill out the page. Make sure these objects really fill out the space nicely so you don't have too much negative space left. Here's the finished construction drawing. So you can see things look see-through. Very light lines, light enough for me to easily erase if I need to. Composition looks pretty good. I'm happy with proportions. So if you're happy with things, then you can move on. And here's the next step where you can see I did some cleanup work. So this is my completed contour line drawing. Contour means outline. So as you can see, all the lines that I didn't need anymore were erased. So now things look solid. They don't look see-through anymore. Because I finished my contour line drawing, I can now move on to filling in the values. When you fill in values, use the side of the pencil lead. This is why it's so important to sharpen them to a long point. If you don't know how to do that, check out my video on how to sharpen a pencil to a long point. This will allow you to draw so much faster because you have more of the pencil lead exposed as you apply the pencil strokes really close together, as you can see in my demo here. You can apply the graphite evenly. I'm starting out with an HB pencil. I tend to work in layers, which I highly recommend. You may wonder why, for example, that cylinder shape that is really dark in real life, why not go straight to a 4B and use a lot of pressure and fill it in right away? The reason is it typically doesn't look very good and won't apply very evenly. And if you apply too much pressure, you can dent the paper and the graphite will look really shiny and harsh and it won't look very even. It takes away from the realism of the drawing. So instead, I will work with light leads up to the dark leads in layers. So the H range of pencils contains more binder and less graphite, so it makes the lead harder and lighter. The binder helps prep the paper for some of those softer, darker leads. I'm starting off with the HB to prep the paper with a nice, even, smooth layer of graphite, and then I will work my way up to the darker leads. So after this layer, I will do a 2B, and then after that, I will layer up to a 4B. The 4B is the darkest lead that I'm working with today. Obviously, if you have a wider range of graphite pencils than these three, you can feel free to use them. But for this demo, I'm only using these three. It helps the 4B lead to look more smooth and even when you layer in this way. I'm sure you've noticed I'm not using any blending tools or smudging with any tools or fingers. The reason is because smudging can flatten the form and it can also make everything look messy, flat, cloudy, and less convincing. You lose the structure of the drawing when you overblend. Now, Everyone has a different style. It's not wrong to blend, but I prefer to teach my students how to draw in a convincing way without blending, because more often than not, students or those who are new to drawing overblend because it seems like such a fast and easy way to fill in an area, but it does flatten the form considerably. Advanced artists may use subtle blending at the end of the drawing, but I do not allow my students to use any blending tools at all. It's a great idea to protect your hands from the paper. I forgot to protect my hands from this drawing and I regretted it later because the oils from my hand seeped into the paper, and when I tried to draw in those areas, the graphite did not apply very well and it kind of retained that smudge. So I highly recommend to place an extra small piece of paper under your hand if you're resting your hand on the paper to protect your drawing from any smudges. As you can see, I'm really taking my time, exercising some patience, using the correct techniques to get an even application with no blending tools. I'm keeping my pencil strokes close together. So, this takes some time, but honestly, filling things in like this takes less time than you would imagine when you have your pencils sharpened to that long point, because you have more lead exposed, so it's easier to work more quickly with doing these larger areas. So really take your time, try to use a light touch. If you find yourself tensing up or tending to use heavy pressure, just take a little break, rest your hand, and try to relax. So here I'm working on the leaves a little bit. I'm just trying to look at the overall values, trying to match the values. Again, ignoring detail at the beginning. Save the details for last. Right now, I'm focusing on large and medium shapes to fill in value. Details can always be added later. Details really slow you down, and it's much easier and quicker, more efficient to add them towards the end. Okay, so I'm about halfway done with the drawing here. I applied the first layer to the teapot and the cups, so I'll work on those areas next. Don't forget about the cast shadows and shadows in the background. You don't want your objects to look like they're floating in space. You want them to look grounded. You want to have a wide range of values represented so everything looks three-dimensional. Here I am laying in the shadow area of the teapot. I'm trying to match the values to what I'm seeing in real life. I'm really taking my time, but it doesn't take too long to fill in a large area when you use the right techniques with the pencils sharpened to a long point. So while we're watching me work on this area, I'll review the steps we've gone through. Step number 1, make sure your materials are ready. Step number 2, set up the still life. Try out different objects. Try different arrangements with the objects. Make sure you have one single light source on your arrangement. Step 3, sharpen your pencils to a long point. Again, I have a separate video on sharpening pencils on my channel if you need that. Step 4, do a minimum of 5 thumbnail drawings to discover a strong composition. Step 5, construction drawing, citing technique for proportion. So in other words, you're drawing as if things are see-through, you're thinking about composition, proportions, making adjustments on your basic shapes. Step 6 is cleaning things up to a contour drawing, so no more see-through items. Clean everything up to just outlines. Very light outlines, by the way. Step 7 is filling in the values, using an even application of the graphite, matching the values from observation, and do not use any blending tools. Step 8, which is the last step, will be photographing your drawing. As you can see here, I'm continuing to fill things in, working from light to dark with that layering technique with the pencils. Okay, let's talk real quick about photographing, because as you can see here with my finished drawing, I got a pretty decent photograph with my smartphone. Now, graphite tends to not photograph very well in certain lighting. It can sometimes appear shiny in photos, especially if you're using a flash. So you're going to have to trial and error a little bit here. I use natural light coming in from the door. The drawing is on the floor, actually. And so I got some even light, natural lighting coming in during the day. We're very lucky with modern technology to have great quality cameras in our smartphones. I use natural light, as you can see. But soft indoor lighting can sometimes work well too. If you find that you're casting shadows over your drawing as you're hovering over it, you may instead want to tack your drawing on the wall and photograph it this way so that you can avoid casting shadows on it. It's worthwhile to try out different areas and light sources. Try indoors, try outdoors, try during the day. Photographing at night is much more challenging to get a good photo. I find that photographing indoors at night makes my drawing look orange. So again, trial and error. Don't settle for a poor quality photo. Avoid casting shadows onto the drawing. To check if your photo is blurry, after you take the photos, zoom in and check, the clarity of the image. Since looking at the image on a small screen can sometimes be hard to tell if it's clear. Take the photo straight on and not at an angle so that everything looks proportionally accurate. Include the edges of the drawing so that in the photo so that we can see the entire composition. So as you can see here, we can see the whole drawing. You can always crop it in later if you want to, but it's important to be able to see the whole thing, so don't zoom in too much. Obviously, there are many different ways to accomplish a graphite drawing. This is one way. I have years of experience and have looked at how other professionals draw. This is a great way for students to learn how to draw because it's a way that saves time as you catch mistakes early on. And it makes your objects look structural and it's convincing and realistic. It's great for students to learn different techniques. This is one to learn, put in your knowledge toolbox. Think of it as a challenge, something new to learn, and later on, if you choose to use other techniques, you will find your own way to draw. I have seen certain artists who only use light H range pencils to create very delicate, soft drawings, or some artists who only use dark B range pencils on textured paper to get a dark and moody look. Your choice of paper, pencils, and techniques all depends on how you want to communicate your art. But for my students, this is how I teach because I get really good results. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope it provided a helpful review.